Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's HCMx Radio, the only podcast in the HCM arena that weaves current market research, HR technology, and industry leaders into each episode. Our HCMx Radio host is our Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cook.
Hi, I'm Rachel Cook. I'm the COO of Brandon Hall Group and also the host of our podcast, our HCMx Radio podcast. And I'd like to welcome with me today, Samantha Lane, the Content Director at SAP Litmos. Hi, Sam, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
It's nice to have you back. You've been on our podcast several times before, so it's always an interesting conversation, whether in person or virtual. And today we're going to be talking about adaptivity and how the research that you've done on this topic and how that translates to the world that we live in the workplace particularly, and how you're helping your people in your organization and your clients kind of navigate through this interesting time that we are all in. And also welcome Dave Wentworth, our Principal Learning Analyst. Nice to have you with me today, as always, and we're going to hear from you and talk a little bit about our research, our ongoing research that we have on learning, and how, I think that if adaptivity is so critical for learning professionals, for leaders, for people, whether you're starting in your profession or you're just getting started in your career or you're kind of more senior, I think now more than ever we need to have the right skills and the ability to adapt to our environments and to be able to be resilient and to come out on the other end and to be successful. And so Dave, why don't you kick us off here with from what you're seeing, what would you say was the biggest impact the pandemic has had on training?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the impact is huge and it hits on many levels, but I think the biggest impact is that it's created sort of an acceleration of where things were sort of already headed. The kind of things that we've been talking about in this pandemic environment, things like a more digital approach to learning, a broader spread of tools that we're going to use. These are the kind of things that we had been talking about prior to 2020 anyway, and a lot of organizations were sort of finding their way, thinking if it was feasible, don't know, maybe experiment a little here and there, and then suddenly overnight, in-person training was pulled out from under them and they had no choice. And so it really sort of pushed all of this stuff to the forefront. Things that have been knocking around in people's heads for a while became imminently critical. So in a way, as much as it's hard to think of it this way, it's in a good way. The silver lining, I guess, is that this direction where we all sort of thought and hoped learning was going in has now been shoved very quickly in that direction. The challenge with that, of course, is how do you make that transition quickly and the right way and do it in a sustainable way? But to me, that's the biggest push, is that on the one hand, you've got learning departments that were pushing for this stuff and maybe not getting a lot of headway with leadership. Suddenly those doors were flung wide open, or just organizations, even from a learning perspective, who hadn't thought about this stuff or didn't think it was that important, realize now how critical it is to have some sort of strategy when it comes to digital and virtual tools for learning.
Yeah, I could agree.
I agree. Yeah, it's just, and not just coming from the Litmos perspective, which I do, but we've been talking for years, David, with you and others at Brandon Hall Group about, reaching the C-suite and, increasing the importance of training in the organization. And this, as you said, the doors flew wide open, and it was like, how are we going to do this? And the only way the companies were going to be able to do it, our clients included, new clients included, was, well, we need to get all this stuff online, and it needs to be effective, and it needs to be accessible from anywhere, it needs to be mobile, and it needs to be, all the things we've been talking about for years, and it just happened like.
Yep, and the simultaneous thing of, in a lot of cases, we saw cuts to L&D, whether it's, resources, headcount, actual budget. But at the same time, in our own research, one of the things we asked is, how has the pandemic impacted L&D? And for like 3/4 of organizations said it's actually made it's raised L&D's profile as a strategic partner in the business. So you have those two things where, yay, they finally recognize our strategic value, and oh no, we have less things to do that with. So how do we do that?
Interesting.
With an investment in online training, obviously. So
that segues into my next question. With organizations focused on returning back to the workplace, do we still need to focus on remote workers, and what is that? What do you think that companies should be focusing on now?
Well, Dave, if you don't mind, I love this discussion, this particular topic that's been coming up all over the place. If you don't mind, if I jump in on this one, the short answer I would say, Rachel, is yes. We absolutely need to be focusing on remote training, and I've been taking notes in the last few weeks about that there are studies now that remote workers are actually happier than non, and again, there are obviously people that did not have that as an option. But as we go forward, I've got stats here on a recent Gartner survey that says 80% of company leaders are going to let their people work remotely post-pandemic, at least part-time, 47% full-time. So the conversation is still extremely relevant. It's going to continue to be extremely relevant as we go forward.
Yeah, we've got similar research out that came back that said the same thing, that yes, there are return to work strategies in place, but it's not all black and white, and there is no set time frame that it's going to be by this date. Some organizations have already figured out their return to work. Others don't think they're going to have it nailed down until early 2022 or later. So it's all happening at different times. And then what is that return to work strategy? Is it, okay, you people can stay remote, you people come back? And it's not even going to be that simple or that black and white. It's going to be, nope, these people are going to be remote. These people are going to be remote sometime. They can come into the office when they feel like it. And over here, we're going to do 50-50 back and forth. So it's going to be this complete blend, and you're never going to be able to count on any one group of people being in one place at any given moment. So whatever strategies you're trying to figure out now for a remote workforce, they're still going to be relevant and important in the future workforce, because a huge contingent of those workers will still be remote to some degree, or if not permanently. And again, going back to the original discussion, right, Sam, is that these things that we're talking about, they're not unique and special to this environment, right? These are strategies and tools and technologies that have been proven to be effective and important for learning to achieve results. It isn't just about, well, people are at home, so we have to do this. This has been the right thing to do prior to 2020. So
absolutely, we see the WFH, work from home, but there's also a big WFA, the work from anywhere movement that was happening even before any of this happened, where it was like we need to catch up. We need to catch up with where people are, and where people are is often in these the times we live in. They're mobile, they're anywhere, they're there's just so much more flexibility than you must be within the four walls of the company.
And mobility, that was huge. Even before the pandemic, I think that was becoming, or I would say, not every organization had a mobility strategy or a opportunities for their employees to work from anywhere, or to be able to cross train or go to another country. But those companies that are global, like SAP, I know they had a very well-defined mobility strategy. And we saw a lot in our research that it was becoming more advantageous for especially new generations coming into the workplace. They want to have opportunities. They have less responsibilities or family responsibilities, especially when they're starting in their career. So it's a great way to kind of get that new talent. And also, depending kind of where you are in your career, you may be more senior, but you don't have the same kind of responsibilities you may have in between your your lifespan. So it might be a great opportunity for you to explore working in Asia, where you may not have had the opportunity if you're raising young children. And not everybody's raising young children, but that does, there is a good percentage in the workplace that are, and there's a lot of talent there. So I think mobility is so important. And another thing that comes to mind that I find interesting, I was talking to a friend who does commercial real estate, and we're seeing such an influx in Florida with organizations moving here, moving out of the city. Goldman Sachs is moving out of New York, and they're coming to Florida. So, and they're buying a lot of commercial properties. And so it's interesting because I wonder what that's going to look like. I think there's so much between now and the next 5 years that things are going to be kind of uncertain as to where people are moving to. Are they staying in New York City or these big cities that everyone's trying to relocate? Are they all coming to Florida? I hope not. I hope not, but it'll be interesting. But I know for at least probably from what we're seeing and talking to people, I think the next 5 years are going to be a lot of ups and downs with what that's going to look like.
Yeah, and even on the flip side of the younger, the more junior side of the scale in the workforce, the more senior side of the scale. I mean, again, seeing stories, articles, and even having personal anecdotes. I mean, there are people who are needing to move to take care of aging parents, and they don't want to have to quit their job in order to do that. So it's like, I'm sorry, but they might have to move to Florida, Rachel.
Arizona's another nice state.
but no, we are seeing that. So I mean, the numbers of there's some information out there about the numbers of people who are wanting that level of flexibility, not just as younger younger members of our workforce, but people who are middle-aged and senior in their careers, who are saying, I want to keep being productive, and I want to keep training, I need to stay connected, but I have some other life priorities that are causing me to relocate geographically.
Well, and also think of it that this has opened up this whole new set of opportunities where, like something what you're describing, Rachel, is an organization. Not only is it the workforce saying, it's better for me if I live here and I work from home or I work remotely, but now organizations realize, once they've sort of accepted and become comfortable with remote work, the talent pool has opened up dramatically for them, right? They don't have to hire somebody from down the street. They can hire somebody from across the country. And so on the one hand, the company's located here, we can hire from anywhere. Or in the case of, like you're describing, an organization in New York City, it's like, why are we paying all this money for this New York City headquarters? We can move the headquarters somewhere more, competitively priced, and we can hire people from anywhere. We don't have to be where we feel like the hub of the talent is. And so now that opens up this whole other world of talent that creates another permanent class of remote workers that are going to need learning, development, and training opportunities as well.
Yeah, I wrote down a stat, Dave, before this call that it was from Glassdoor, and it said that remote jobs, like remote only or remote predominant jobs, are up 28% year over year, where they're like, we don't care where you live. And the other cool thing about that, and this is a big push at SAP right now, is diversity, quality, inclusion. It's fantastic for diversity, because if you can only hire people within your city or surrounding areas, it's probably a pretty similar population. What some of this does is it really opens up the diversity capabilities as well, because you can hire, as long as it works, with time zones and all that stuff, however your team is structured, but it does wonderful things for diversity.
Absolutely. And what do you see as training's role now with, in our current state? What do learning professionals, how do they equip themselves to do their best in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning how this situation has raised L&D's profile in the organization. I think one of the big things, it isn't just about doing things in new ways and reaching your learners with new technologies and new tools, but there's also this huge need to just reskill and upskill the workforce, because now jobs have completely changed. The job that I did a year ago either doesn't exist or it's completely different. I have to approach it differently. Our products have been turned upside down. Our services are all new. So whatever L&D challenges you had before, and then you have to now, apply that in a remote environment, but then add on top of that this whole new set of upskill and reskill priorities that we've got. So that, I think, is one of the biggest things that's going on for learning now, is wrapping their heads around it. It's one of these issues we talked about. I used to talk about it a lot when digital transformation was sort of the buzzword before the pandemic. That was what everyone was talking about, and honestly, that's sort of what the pandemic has done, is accelerated that digital transformation. But from an L&D standpoint, the L&D function can't get in the back of the van of the digital transformation and say, okay, let's go, can't wait to get there, because L&D's in charge of that, right? Almost to a degree. It's important. L&D's in charge of getting people from A to B, so they should be driving the van, getting people to that digital transformation place. They can't do it without the skills and the behaviors that they need to do it. So similarly, throughout this pandemic, L&D has to take this lead role in this transition. You can't sit back and wait and say, okay, well, we'll see how the organization shakes out, and then we'll do what we do. They have to be on the front lines of this, because it requires all of this new, these new skills, moving people sideways, up and down throughout the organization.
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic that the role of L&D within the organization has just been massively elevated. And in regard to reskilling, upskilling, it's so interesting to see what some industries are doing. I mean, I've even been looking at some stuff about, medical professionals who, telemedicine has become this huge thing. And there's a whole bunch of related compliance training. I mean, whether you're a teletherapist or a teledoctor, or, these are brand new skills that already highly skilled individuals are now upskilling to another degree of capability or competency, as far as learning new technologies. Okay, I just read an article about a woman who runs a therapy group, has several offices, and she's like, now I can hire a teletherapist in New York, where I think she was based in Arizona. And she was saying, this is so cool, because we have these new compliance trainings and these new technologies that are enabling us to do this, we train them on it, and now I can hire from anywhere and provide services that I wasn't able to provide before.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies that didn't have to let their people go this past year, we saw large banking institutions, telecommunication companies and industries, they were able to totally reskill and upskill their people and switch them into jobs that they needed to support this new to support their transformation of switching everybody remotely. You had you had frontline sales that were meeting with people. They had to learn how to move into telesales. You had people that were in a call center. They had to maybe move into more technical roles, or understand how do you help someone fix a telephone wire and try to troubleshoot with actually not going there yet if they couldn't get there. So there were so many things that these companies did, and they were amazing, and they were able to save millions of jobs by thinking smart and being able to adapt quickly to the environment. Any other examples? I know you have a ton. Anything else that stands out to you? Some of the key training programs that you've seen this past year, or that you are excited about going forward?
Well, there are so many. I mean, and it's just been exciting to watch. I mean, even in regard to what you were just saying, I mean, we have certain technology in Litmos where you can do what we call a hotspot training, where if it's a service tech, you can, it's not like a virtual environment per se, but where someone can actually learn a training that feels like they're doing it in person. We've seen from a learning content perspective, a huge push in any content related to mental health and well-being, work-life balance for obvious reasons, stress management. So that content from an SAP Litmos standpoint, I mean, has just been a big thing that companies have been recognizing as not a nice to have, but a really need to have from the standpoint if you want to keep your workforce happy and engaged and satisfied and productive, that mental health is part of that deal. You can't just burn these people out when they've got 3 kids running around the living room and they're trying to do homeschooling and they're trying to do their job, and that's just not really even a reasonable request at this point. So that's been I think a silver lining to all of this, is that companies have started to recognize that training for those things and offering support for those things are really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we've seen in our own research too, this, so again, a trend that had started already but was accelerated by this, is this adaptation of leadership skills throughout the whole organization, right? So the things that companies were always focused on for leaders, they're trying to drive these different, like, adaptability, emotional intelligence, all of these things that were very much focused as part of leadership development. Organizations have said, look, let's develop leaders at all levels. Like, why wouldn't we want everyone to be a critical thinker? Why wouldn't we want everyone to have strong emotional intelligence? And an event like this shows that how necessary that is at every level, so that people can make these changes and adapt with the business. And I think, ultimately, if there's one takeaway from this whole thing, at least for me, I'm sure there's a million out there, but is that this has wholesale changed what organizations define as change, right? For years prior, we all talked about the VUCA world. It's volatile. It's all this stuff, uncertainty and everything. But the definition of what that was only based on their recent experience. And so now they realize, oh, change can be this big. So when we think we need to be adaptable and we need to have the skills in place to manage change, this is what we're talking about. If we can manage this, we can manage anything less than this.
Very true. And so, Sam, what can you expect, or what I just asked you this question, but what is there anything new coming out? What does your summer look like as far as what you're going to be offering? Anything, any events coming up?
Oh, we have a wonderful event. And just before I get to that, Rich, I wanted to add one other thing, because I know this is a hot topic for Dave as well, which is we've seen this major asynchronous burnout on, companies that, Rachel, have only, during the last year have been offering only online self-paced training. And we're just seeing a huge uptick in companies that are using, like, we have a feature built into Litmos, which is an ILT feature where you can, Litmos integrates with all the top web conferencing players. Name your favorite one, we integrate with them. And it's been this major push. In another study I read that, people want, even if it's not live, like physically in person, they want to be training in an environment where there's an actual instructor there, and there are other students there, or they can do group work, or they can, so all that's a big thing that's been going on. So, but to get to your actual question, we have a fantastic event coming up on May 5th. It's called Litmos Live, and you can register. If it's okay, can I give the landing page?
Yeah,
well, I'll give the Litmos overview page. You can go to litmos.com, litmos.com/litmos-live, and we have a 1-day 5-track 25-session event happening. Some folks from your very own organization are doing a session, so we're really excited about that, and that's a big push in it. And it's there's so many cool things related to even a lot of the stuff we're talking about right now. We're talking about diversity and inclusion. We're talking about remote work. We're talking about, all these really front of mind topics for L&D and HR people. So yeah, I would encourage anybody who's listening to go to litmos.com/litmos-live and check it out and register.
Great. And that, yes, so please go to their event. And it's going to be, lots of great topics, lots of great leaders from your organization, Sam. So if you're listening in or viewing us, I highly recommend you joining their event. And our event, we've decided to move it back to move it into 2022. But we have a series of virtual webinars every week on a variety of topics. And so, we hope next year will be different. We'll see, but also going back to what you said about what you're seeing, creating these virtual environments where you have collaboration is important. And we started seeing that with our strategic learning professional certifications. So that's exciting to see. We have people that are going through it independently on their own, but we also have cohorts that are going through it with their organizations. And you see the leader really excited because it's hard for the executive or the manager to facilitate these discussions and to keep that momentum going. And so, in our environment, we're taking our research and our award-winning case studies and helping them apply it. And so, and you see the rich discussion and you see the excitement, and it's something that companies are thriving. And I think that's why your clients are doing so well, is because they need these opportunities to be able to connect with each other, sometimes cross-connect across departments and geographies, or even in your own company, not everybody knows each other. We saw that at our excellence conference, where you had people from meeting each other sometimes for the first time at our event. So that was exciting. And as far as what to expect this year, I think there's gonna be a lot more of that. And I commend you for what you do and how you're supporting your clients and what you're offering. And so it's nice to partner with organizations like you that are positioned really well to help and to be a resource and to be able to help companies guide and navigate through this successfully.
Well, thank you. And I should add in regard to that, as far as being a resource, I probably didn't say this, but Litmos Live is probably a bit of a misnomer. It is entirely virtual. So no worries about that, because we have had concerns about that. It's entirely virtual and it's entirely free. So it's a resource. You don't have to pay any money to come and learn and participate. So I do think Litmos has always been the type of brand that does pull its customers together and really kind of enliven the community. So we are proud of that, and we're going to continue to do that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you, David. Sam, besides, I know you had given everyone information how to connect to your events, to Litmos Live. If they want to reach out to you about some of the discussion today, or learn more about your offerings, what's the best way to contact you?
They can certainly use my direct email, which is samantha.lang, which is just LANG @sap.com. More than welcome to even use marketing@litmos.com if anyone wants to hit most of my team, but feel free to contact me directly as well. That would be just fine.
Okay, great. Thank you, Samantha or Sam. And thank you, Dave. And everyone, thank you for listening in and tuning in today with us. Take care, be safe, be happy and healthy.